welcome to Brand and Becoming. I'm Caisha Sheikh, LinkedIn Visibility Partner, who helps founders and senior leaders turn their experience into opportunity through personal branding and thought leadership. On this show, I speak with founders and senior leaders about their careers, leadership, and the experiences that shape them. Today, I'm joined by Dora Michail-Clendinnen, Chief Revenue Officer at Venatus. Dora has built an incredible career across media and advertising. She's held senior roles across organisations including Yahoo, the Telegraph and Ozone, and today leads revenue at Venatus, a global platform connecting brands with gaming audiences. Her career spans strategy, media, advertising, and commercial leadership across more than 2 decades in digital media. Dora, it's great to have you here and welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to getting inside your mind, but also kind of your experience, and hopefully we can help other people that are listening as well. And I know you do a lot of speaking at events, and I think it'd be really cool if you can kind of bring some of what you speak about to kind of the podcast as well, which would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you like.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So I suppose we'll start with, for anyone that doesn't know you yet or hasn't kind of come across you either on LinkedIn or at an event or through your career, could you, I suppose, tell us a little bit more about what it is that you're currently doing, then we'll talk a little bit more about what you have done previously as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my current role is I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at a business called Venatus. We are a gaming and entertainment platform. And what we do is we work with some of the most premium gaming apps and websites globally to support them in their monetization efforts. And in the majority of cases, we'll do that for them exclusively. So they can focus on their development, game development, content, etc. And we handle the monetization aspect for them through advertising. So we've got relationships with the big ad agencies and the biggest brands in the world who want to be featured, their advertising featured in gaming environments for gaming audiences, and we help our publishers by bringing those ad budgets to them. And we've got offices and sales teams in here in where I am in London, but also in Sydney, in Seoul, and across the United States as well.
Amazing. And well, from what I can see, and I know you'll have a lot more information about it, but there's a lot of opportunity now with gaming and kind of how much it's growing. So it'd be really good to, I suppose, to understand more from you about how that works, and I suppose almost some of the misconceptions as well about it. But do you think there's quite a lot of misconceptions about the industry?
I think it's safe to say that the perception is shifting. I think that the old idea of a typical gamer, in my circles, it doesn't really exist anymore. In probably broader circles, certain people who aren't gamers or think they're not gamers have a certain idea about what it means to be a gamer. But really, there's no such thing as just sort of one homogenous idea of what a gamer is. People play games across all sort of intersections. So every age group, gender, interest. It could be a few minutes playing something on your phone. It could be hours and hours on a console. But for example, I don't know. Do you like doing Stoku? Do you play Wordle? I did Wordle this morning.
Yeah. Especially when like commuting or like things like that, I see it all the time where people are on their phones or keeping themselves occupied.
Absolutely, it's one of the things that people do most on their phone is play games, and for that reason, we're all in some way gamers. But I think that sometimes that's less obvious to some people. But what's interesting and exciting for the space that I'm in, which is advertising within gaming environments, brands really are starting to catch up with that idea, that that reality. We're seeing our ad agencies really lean into that, treat gaming as a platform that can be used for things like creative storytelling, rather than just like sort of a niche, something niche on their ad plan. It's becoming much more mainstream. I think it's just really not part of the it's not a subculture anymore. It's very much culture, part of our.
Yeah.
And so we work with advertisers to help them see that the best results come from really leaning in, really engaging with who the audience is, thinking about how you connect your brand with the audience that you're trying to reach in the right environment, using the right formats. Um, and as long as you do that in a way that feels authentic to the people who are actually playing, you're not alienating people. You're giving them an experience that enhances their play, because you're offering them, here's a free life, or here's, get to this level, or get a little hint in this word game, or whatever it may be, by watching this ad. And people are really receptive to that generally, and really quite lent into that idea. So yeah, there's it's quite an interesting place to be, and gaming is growing and growing. There are 3 billion gamers across the globe. That's fun.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, the opportunities there, and providing, and I suppose with it as well, because it's usually something that they'll want, or like even there's a game that I always play when I'm on the plane, and it's word cookies, and it's like those things where it's like, yeah, get this extra life, or get this and you can get an extra, those little things like that. You click on it, don't you? Because then you want that thing. So it's kind of, I can see how you're explaining it there is it's something that people want, so they end up doing it, don't they? And it doesn't feel like much hassle.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like hassle, and also you usually pay attention to the ad that is in front of you, and really one way to think about it is that brand, whoever that advertiser is enhancing your play. They're giving you the free life so you can keep playing. So it's a symbiotic relationship. There's not one party getting more than the other. There's sort of almost a contract between the player and the advertiser, and we just help that, we enable that, we provide the technology to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And so just talking a bit more about you and your earlier career, are you able to share a bit more about what you first started doing within your career, and I suppose how your career has progressed, and if it's been, I suppose, a few questions in one, but if you've intentionally progressed it, how you have, or if you felt like maybe opportunities were presented to you, or how you've navigated your career from the earlier days?
Yeah, so I've always been in digital. I think that's the first thing to say. I've always worked on the internet. So I graduated having read English literature at university. So I went into the workforce just after the second .com bubble had burst. And that meant things were on the up again. And it also meant that, there was experience, there was learnings, but there was also still excitement about what the internet could be. And it was such early days. And I was working for a business named Ask Jeeves. They are still around in some small way, but at the time they were a pretty significant search engine. They were there before Google was, and my job was to curate the results for the travel category. And that was where I cut my teeth, really. So I was working on the product. I was learning how it all worked back end, but then more and more, what I began to realize was I was quite good at explaining how it worked to clients, so to our advertisers. And what ended up happening is the salespeople who I worked with very closely internally ended up asking me to join them on their sales meetings, because I could explain, advertising on the internet in a really simple, structured way. And it was still very, very new for a lot of brands and a lot of agencies. And so I found a way of, I guess, making it sound easy. It really wasn't that complicated. And so I was able to sort of be part of that sales process, and I ended up really enjoying that. So where I started more back end on the product side and the product development and management side, I ended up more and more actually realizing that I was much more enjoying the commercial aspect of being able to just get out there and talk to people. And so with that theme in mind, after I left Ask Jeeves, I ended up joining a startup called Blue Lithium, and I was there not for very long, only for 2.5 years before we ended up getting bought by Yahoo. And
Oh,
so
wow.
what I had done at Blue Lithium was I had actually created the sort of, we call it the kind of client services end of or client services department, and sales would bring in the campaigns. It was my job and my team's job to ensure that those who saw the advertising were best placed to see it.
Yeah.
And in the right environment, with the right format, all of those things. And that process of then joining Yahoo ended up, I sort of think, because I was relatively young, I was in my mid 20s, it was sort of the making of me. I ended up being responsible over the years for a really large team. I was there for nearly a decade in the end, and what started as a team of 5 or 6 ended up being a team of nearly 100 people, when I was responsible for the whole department, really, sort of sales and operations and pricing and all of those things that go into delivering online advertising. And so I loved it. And by the time I left Yahoo, I had so much experience and a love for what I did, that I sort of kept going in that area. And I ended up joining the Telegraph after that, as the managing director of digital. So that was a department that was responsible for really just building out the revenue and operations within that business. That was lots of fun. Then I went into, it's going on a bit. Sorry,
No,
like you said,
it's really quite interesting. It just shows like how you.
decades.
Yeah.
um,
Were you approached by the? I suppose another question whilst you're explaining, because I think it's good for people who maybe are navigating their career or are interested, and because I think it's something that some people do struggle with. But were you approached about those opportunities, or did you apply for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So actually, obviously, I joined Yahoo through an acquisition,
Yeah.
and then my boss at Yahoo, for sort of the majority of my time at Yahoo, he left and went on to be the CEO of the Telegraph, and he
Right.
asked me
Okay.
to join him. So I didn't, there wasn't many things that could drag me away from Yahoo, because I had such a great experience there, but I wanted to work for him again. We had a good working relationship, and so I followed him to the Telegraph, basically.
Well, that's amazing, though, I think if you work well with someone, and obviously he really liked working with you and rated working with you, then it shows, doesn't it? And I think that's something that to bear in mind for whatever company you're at. Even if you're not enjoying it maybe as much as you're at Yahoo, you may enjoy working with someone. So build those relationships, because they can always help take you places as well, and do a good job.
I think that's absolutely right. I think it's about, a big part of it for me. There's a couple of things I think I've learned along the way, is who you work with and who you work for is really important.
Yeah.
And not compromising on that as sort of an area of priority in your decision making about where you go next in your career, I think is incredibly important. And staying close to your network. I think just never underestimate the importance of your network, and the people that you've met, and being, I guess, open to opportunities, open to conversations. Even if you're very, very settled in your job, I always encourage people to just chat, to see what's happening in the market. Like, keeping in contact with friends in recruitment who are just on the ground talking to so many different businesses every day. They've got such a lot of insight, but then you're also useful to them, because you've got specific knowledge about
that gets underestimated a lot. I think even what you just said there about staying close to recruiters or just people in the industry, because actually, although it may take a bit of your time, and if you're super busy in your role, it's not always ideal when you're stretched as it is. But like you said, keeping those relationships, and I used to work in recruitment. That was how I kind of started out my career, and I think recruiters kind of get a bad name, but actually there's a lot of good ones out there, and like you said, their role is to be talking to people, to speaking to clients, to speaking to candidates, knowing what's going on in the market. So they are a great tool. Like obviously if you, but like with a bit like how you said with the game and the advertising, it's kind of has to be a win-win for both. It's a bit like that with recruiters, isn't it? It's kind of you add to them, they add to you, and keeping those relationships alive always helps.
Absolutely. And they are talking to so many businesses.
Yeah.
And so they get such insight into a business's strategy. They're not going to disclose confidential things, but
Yeah.
just sort of knowing like who's moving around, who's building a new team, all of those things. It just adds, I think it always just adds layers and layers to sort of who you end up meeting, and how you experience, your part of work. The industry I'm in is I would say relatively small. Like there's lots of us, but it feels small because we're a sociable bunch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sharing and like knowledge sharing and things like that, which I think is a really key part of why I like what I do. And
that's really good.
Yeah.
And your role now, how did that one come about? Was that via a recruiter, or was that via a network, or something else?
Well, it wasn't. It was the same boss that I had.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, same boss that I had at Yahoo and the Telegraph. So actually, there was a little bit in between. I went to another business called Ozone.
Yeah.
Which actually I helped create this business when I was at the Telegraph. It was the business was founded by the Telegraph, the Guardian, News UK, and Reach. And
wow, amazing.
It's quite a unique, unprecedented thing where we created this platform. These two historically rival. These four, historically rival businesses created this advertising platform, and when we did that, I then moved on. I left the Telegraph to go to that business as the chief strategy officer. So coming back to one of your original questions, I've done all sort. I haven't stuck to one thing. It's been a squiggly career in lots of ways, where I've done operations, commercial roles. Ozone was a very, very strategic role, working with shareholders, and then back to Venatus. Like I said, I'm working for the same guy again. Coming back to what we were saying, it works. There's a shorthand. I enjoy working with him. He knows what he's getting with me. I know what I'm getting with him.
And it's like you've got that trust as well, because I think building trust with somebody, obviously you have to build trust with everybody else, and kind of if you bring in people that you already know, that's great, but also the other people there, maybe the leadership team that are existing, or kind of new people you have to bring in. But if you've got that between you both as a foundation, that's really strong, isn't it? And I think you don't have to build that from scratch. And can I trust you? Can I not? Are you going to do what you say you're going to do, or you're not? Those types of things.
Yeah, things like just clear measures of success. You get straight to the heart of it. You kind of, it feels very efficient. And like I said about the shorthand, some things I don't need to kind of clarify things because I get it. Because we've worked together for so long. But in the end, it's all about, again, just having a good relationship, being open to those conversations, and being able to be very clear about what you can offer. And making sure other people know that too.
Definitely, that's really good advice. And I think, like you say, being open to conversations, I think is a really big takeaway from what you've said there, is being open to conversations and the relationships that matter, and people that you kind of enjoy working with, whether it's kind of internally or even externally. Stay close to those people, because you just never know where an opportunity may lead, or it could be anything. It could even be like a speaking opportunity. It could be a podcast. It could be an opportunity to work on a cool new business, or it could be anything, couldn't it? Or just even a mentorship, or it could be anything. You just never know where it may lead.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. Being open, being friendly, being curious. I think that's the big one as well, being curious.
Do you find that hard being so, I suppose, in your role now, obviously you're in a very senior role, do you find that hard because you've already got so many demands? And I know obviously you're also a mother and like you've got, I suppose, a busy family life. Do you find it hard being open and curious and having those conversations and making time for them, or how do you manage that?
I think that there is something uniquely efficient about a working parent.
Yeah.
Because and that's not to say that non-parents are not efficient, but I have found myself having to be very efficient because I'm trying to do everything as best as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And so in my hours of work, I think very carefully about what needs doing that day, what are the important things. And some of that will be just keeping in contact with people, just calling a friend in the industry because I've got a question about how does this thing work, or have you got experience with this kind of challenge because we've got this going on, and you never know what you can learn. And I try not to let that slip.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get internal, especially if you've got a big team and big targets and lots of demands. And so you make time. I make time. And I do that in my working hours. And then when I get home, I'm very, very clear about now it's my family time, and I get home, as much as I can. I get home for bath time and
that's nice.
really
Yeah. And I suppose, like you say, it's prioritizing as well in your working hours and making time for what you need to, but also keeping in touch with people. I suppose it's even just blocking out in your diary, maybe for people that struggle with those types of things, and blocking out those kind of networking or keeping in contact things if you struggle to do that naturally, maybe.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be every day. And I think we don't need to sort of labor it or make it feel forced. It's just when you need to carve that time out, like you say, you could just chuck it in your diary and then nobody can infringe on that time because you've blocked it out. Sometimes that works really well.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose now that you work in the intersection of gaming and advertising, you briefly touched on it, but I just want to talk about it a bit more for maybe those who don't understand it as much. But for leaders who may not know, I suppose, much about the gaming space, what should they understand more about how, I suppose, big gaming has become? And is there anything that you can, I suppose, tell leaders that maybe don't really know too much about the industry, or kind of what's it involved and kind of in terms of advertising as well?
Yeah, there's lots of ways that you can think about advertising within gaming, which I suppose as a sort of vertical is really, really broad. Like we already talked briefly about, gaming could be like core gaming, where you're talking about like World of Warcraft or GTA or Fortnite, or it could be like Candy Crush or Wordle or Sudoku or Waffle Game, and then there's everything in between all of that, and so there is, what I would always say is that there's something for everybody in there. There'll be plenty of brands who don't think that like core gaming is for them, and that makes perfect sense. They don't, their sort of mindset is that their audience isn't like the Gen Z type. Might be busy playing Fortnite. They might actually think, we have plenty of brands who think this way. If you go and talk to them about, like I said, brain games, puzzles, there's a really lent-in audience who play puzzles every day, and they can spend hours a week on that sort of thing, and there's real attention, and in the end, advertising is trying to get attention from people, to put your product or your brand in front of them. And there are certain environments where people are really paying attention, and if somebody's, for example, I don't know, doing an online word search or whatever, they're really concentrating on that page, and attention with ads sort of becomes part of that page, because if you're on the page for long enough, your eye wanders around, not just to the word search, for example, but it sort of creates an opportunity for brands to put interesting visuals in front of the player. And we also do things like playable ads as well. So, things like, I don't know, if you're promoting a movie, and it could be a game, the movie could be some kind of cartoon. It's for kids or it's for teenagers, and what you create is something for teenagers where they get to sort of be the character in the movie, and then you get to the end of that game and then you watch the trailer, and that kind of thing.
That's cool. Yeah,
so there's really interactive ways in which you can, like, it's not, there's opportunity to be innovative within gaming. In some environments, there's very specific templates in terms of what the advertising experience looks like. It can sometimes be a bit more flexible in gaming, and that's interesting too.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, the person is locked in on that game, aren't they? So because they're on it for long enough, they're focused. It's not like, I suppose, if they're listening to something or what, although all kind of advertising obviously can work, but because they're locked in, they're obviously paying attention. So I think that's really important, isn't it, to remember?
Yeah, different channels work for different brands, different products, at different moments in a person's day. There's ways in which you can sort of study behavior to figure out when is the right time to advertise your product, and in what channel.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's super interesting for maybe people who aren't too aware or haven't even explored that avenue or started to think about it, but maybe don't really haven't got their heads around it yet. I wanted to speak to you, and especially because your career, like you've even just explained, has been over you've done so much and also have done so well, if I can say that. So you've done a great job, but also at kind of progressing, managing, kind of leading, all those types of things, and kind of maintaining being nice and kind of being able to have those relationships. But also you've worked across industries that can still be quite male dominated. Would you say there's anything that's helped you build confidence and, I suppose, credibility as a leader? Even so, like you said, you started young, but has there been anything that's helped you with navigating that from what you can remember, or anything that you've proactively done?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is surrounding myself with good people. Primarily women, to answer your specific question, but not exclusively. We've just talked about my boss, who's a man, and he's been a great champion, and very supportive of my career. But there are women in the industry, people I have known for a really long time, who are just, we are each other's cheerleaders. And I think that is one of the most important things in terms of, if you're lacking confidence one day, or if just you didn't get the job that you went for, or whatever it may be, having people around you, in particular for me, women around you who are successful, who are brave, who are curious, like we talked about, and who are your champions, and you can be theirs. That for me has been really key in terms of, I guess, getting me through the last 2 decades so far.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think it's gotten easier at all, or maybe I suppose now your circle's got better and you've known more people, known more women that are inspired, or not? Would you say?
I think it's probably it's a hard one.
Yeah.
Look, like you say, I'm older now. I'm more confident than I was 20 years ago when I first entered the industry.
Yeah.
From that perspective, yes, it's easier, but it's been hard won. You've got to go through it. You've got to build up your resilience. You've got to know your self-worth, if that's the right way of putting it, in terms of what you can offer, and how you can support the business that you work for, the boss that you work for, the team that work for you. It's a sort of it's a 360 thing, I think, and I think the big takeaway, if I reflect on your question, is that yes, it's got easier, but it's got easier because I've had champions, mentors, coaches along the way, and it's now my job to do the same for those coming up.
Yeah, that's nice. And I suppose one more question on that. When you have surrounded yourself with women who are inspiring or who can be there to support you and vice versa, how have you gone about, obviously within 2 decades, but how did you go about finding these women? Did they come to you? How did you source your kind of support group?
Yeah, I mean, it's either people I've worked with directly, so I've been just very lucky to have met them within a job. Brilliant, brilliant people, brilliant women. But more broadly, it comes back to that idea of networking and not getting stuck in the comfort zone of just, it can be so easy to just say to yourself, I am so busy. I'm not going to go to that breakfast event. I'm not going to go to those networking drinks. And I get that. And sometimes I say and sometimes I don't go because we've all got, things going on. But I do think pushing outside of your comfort zone, especially earlier on in your career, that's where you make great connections. And being brave, if you walk into a room and you don't know anybody, it can be really intimidating. But the more you do it, next time, you'll recognize somebody from the last time, and
definitely.
And that's it's putting yourself out there. It's being consistent. It's not treating it as a one-off and as breathing a sigh of relief because you did one networking event. Keep going back.
So it's like you say, it's putting yourself there, and even if you are nervous, the other people in the room will probably be nervous if it's their first time, but also they're all there to network, so they're not going to be horrible to you. You'd like to think that. So they're there to meet other people as well.
Absolutely. And then you get to 20 years later in the industry, and you walk into a room and at least half the people, and that's lovely. But you only get that if you put the hard work in when you're younger.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose it's like, don't be afraid to reach out and ask someone if you're inspired by them. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask them for advice or help. Obviously, they can always say no, or sorry, I'm not at the moment. But I suppose a lot of the women that I have spoken to, and I used to run a women in tech leadership forum, and a lot of the women that I've spoken to over these kind of periods of time is that say if someone reached out to me, generally I would kind of offer my help or help mentor them if they asked. But they would say a lot of the times people don't reach out too much, or the ones that do, then they stand out. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because usually the answer will be yes, even if it's like a little bit of help. Also make someone make an offer ongoing support and mentorship. So you just never know what you may get from asking.
Absolutely. Like my mum says, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think that's all, and that could also lead into a lot more relationships in the future, that you never know where that mentor may, even just that, like a nugget of advice or kind of, inspirational. Yeah, you've got this, you can go for that interview. Sometimes I think as a woman as well, women underestimate their abilities to be able to go for a role, or they see a job description, they think, oh, I haven't got absolutely every single thing on that checkbox, I'm not going to go for it. Whereas actually, you probably can do the role, you probably are qualified for it, but you just don't know it. So kind of sometimes just women saying, yeah, you can do that, actually, you should apply for it, you can definitely do this role. Sometimes that could just be all you need.
For sure, comes back to that idea of women championing women, and being each other's cheerleaders. Sometimes you absolutely need that push, for somebody to point out, like, are you crazy? You have got so much experience. Go, what are you waiting for? Sometimes you need somebody to give you that push.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you spoke at an event recently. I think it was for International Women's Day, the event that you spoke at?
It was last week.
I love that. So that's for redefining influence and closing the leadership gap. Yeah. So from your perspective, what needs to change if we want to see, I suppose, more balanced leadership teams?
Yeah. I think the first thing to say is it has to be intentional. A balanced leadership team is very rarely a happy accident. It is the result of intentional leadership. And that includes things like equitable CVs in terms of gender balance, succession planning, being really deliberate about who are the people who are up for the next promotion, and making sure again that it's equitable in terms of the criteria and the reasons are transparent in terms of how and why people get promoted, and being open about in sort of your job specs when you're writing them, when you're working with HR teams, being very clear about what you just said right now about some women will see a job spec and they'll think, oh, I can only do about 40% of what it says. Whereas you might get a man has done 20% of what it says, but he's going to go for it anyway. And there's lots of reasons that is the case. But thinking about that and being mindful of that when you're writing your CV, when you're writing the job specs, and putting something in the bottom that says, we encourage all candidates to apply, and being when you're and sort of changing the language when you're putting the sort of required skills. It doesn't have to be required skills. It could be change it to say sort of preferred skills or something a little bit softer, so it doesn't feel so exclusive. Language is important, and I think that's important. I just think it's really important, again, mindful and intentional. And if you're trying to get towards a balanced leadership team, it's exactly these tactics that make a difference.
You're so right, and I think even that alone would help a lot, just changing the language in the job specs, job descriptions, because a lot of the times, and even from when I was doing the kind of CIO recruitment, and that we would rarely get women that apply who would be really great for the role, because in the job descriptions they were just putting the women off, because often they're like, oh no, I haven't got all that experience. But most often nobody will have all the the ideal experience because they haven't done that role before. So positioning it that kind of preferred skills or kind of ideally, but if you haven't got all these skills, we'd still like to hear from you. Something like just to encourage them to still put their name forward.
That's absolutely it. Yeah, that I think a change in some of the tone and language in job specs could encourage more applicants who might be put off by a sort of more robust way of describing what you're looking for in a job spec.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I think, like you said, just making sure that the applicants and things like that, there's kind of, I suppose, it's intentional, and I've got that kind of fair level of kind of who's going for each role, but the job specs are well considered and not just kind of pulled out from years ago either. They need to be amended, as time goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the last thing I'd probably say as well, and it does come back to this idea of sort of the unique operational efficiency of being a working parent.
Mm-hmm.
There's something really important about not giving preferential treatment or preferential sort of weight to time spent or hours worked.
Yes.
That doesn't matter. What matters is actual output.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important too. Sort of this idea of presenteeism, which we talk about it since COVID so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be in the office every day.
Yeah.
You also don't have to be online for 12 hours or 15 hours a day to do good work. It's about efficiency and it's about output. And that will give you a much more, again, equitable way of thinking about your leadership team, because some parents can't be online for 12 to 15 hours a day. And it doesn't make sense for them or anyone to be online for 12 to 15 hours a day. You should be able to do your work in the normal working hours.
Yeah.
And I think we should be careful not to reward presenteeism and too many hours worked. I would question that.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. And I think, like you say, if you want to have a good team and good leadership team and good, I suppose, employees overall, that you don't want them to become burnt out either. And it's important that they can still have their own life and their own family or their own hobbies, and then be able to work well and I suppose, get the outcomes that you want, but without having to, like you said, just be present all day, every day to get that result. Whereas actually, I think you prefer to have the outcomes from that. I would always prefer that, if outcomes over just, oh, are you online? Like, no, are we getting the outcomes that we need?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I suppose one question on that, and then I'm just going to move on to something else. But with that being said, when it comes to you hiring now, would you say you do anything different to make sure, I suppose, to get that out in someone? Because obviously it's not how it maybe used to be, like, oh, we're in the office all the time. Well, for a lot of companies, it's not as strict. But how do you get that out of someone in, say, an interview, that it's not about being present all the time, but it's about the outcomes? Do you kind of ask more questions around that, or do you do anything different?
I probably ask for more examples of work that they have produced and how they got there. So I'm very interested to understand their approach to a project. For sure, I want to understand the outcome of the project, but I really want to understand, but what was your thought process, and how did you plan for that project, and how did you know that it was going to be successful? Because really what I'm looking for is a sort of a delivery mindset, I suppose. And so I suppose, as I've interviewed many people over the years, and I've probably got much better at realizing or recognizing what it is I'm looking for. And I think many businesses are looking for, which is the approach to the job. Because we can all be wowed by big numbers and, I hit this budget goal, but that's great. I really want people who can do that, but I really want to know how. And that's important.
That's good advice, and just getting people to talk through their how and kind of how they've delivered it, or their mindset behind it. So I'm conscious of time, but I've got two more, I suppose, questions for you. I've got a segment called Brand Myth versus Brand Truth. So I'll read a statement, if you can tell me whether you think it's a myth or a truth, and just a quick explanation to why. So the first one is, gaming audiences are mainly teenagers. Is that a myth or a truth?
It's a myth. Gamers could be they come from any decade.
Perfect. Well, and we've kind of gone through that, so I don't want to just read that. I thought you were definitely going to say myth. And second one is, gaming is becoming one of the most powerful media channels for brands. Is that a myth or a truth?
I think it's a truth for sure. Just
look, and like we're going to talk about the way things are going, and being able to, at any age, people are on their phones now playing, or kind of on their consoles.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all sorts of ways. You've got a big game release coming next year. GTA 6 should be coming out in November. And there's going to be so many different brand opportunities in and around that game. Not necessarily even in the game. I don't mean that necessarily, but just the opportunities for brands to connect with that game release. There are so many ways that they could do that and connect with that audience.
Definitely. And the last one is, leadership diversity will improve naturally over time without intentional action. Is that a myth or a truth?
That is a myth. You have to work for it, and you have to be deliberate in your actions.
Definitely. Well, thank you. The final question that I have for you, Dora, is, if you could go back to the start of your career, to the very, very start, and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be back yourself. Have more confidence in yourself, and do it even though you're scared.
Love that. Well, I think leaving it on that is amazing, because I think a lot of people, but definitely a lot of women, feel all those things of kind of scared, but maybe if they put off doing it for too long, or they procrastinate, but it's almost like feel the fear and do it anyway, because most people are scared. It's just if you take action and do it. So, and that's what you've done, which is great. And it's really great to see kind of how you've navigated your career, and you've gone for things. And I'm excited to see where your career goes as well. And balancing motherhood and everything is inspiring for me, because one day if that ever happens to me, it's like being able to balance everything, I think, is inspiring for other women as well, isn't it? And other men, but people who are trying to balance family life, career, and kind of, and being successful, but also being successful with your family and your hobbies is kind of that kind of goal, which I think a lot of people are aspiring to.
And we're all just doing our best, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, and I think that people are going to get a lot of value from this, but also, I suppose, inspiration and advice. But if people want to connect with you, would you prefer them to connect with you on LinkedIn? I will kind of drop your kind of details in as well.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best way to get me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if you like more conversations with founders and senior leaders about careers, leadership, and personal branding, feel free to follow me as well. And I will also be back with another episode of Brand and Becoming very soon. So keep your eye out for that as well. But thank you so much, Dora. I appreciate you and speak to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.